Hi, I'm Dr. Bliss and I make beer sometimes, but I've never made bread before, which if you think about it is kind of weird because bread has the same core ingredients as beer: water, yeast and grains, although beer is significantly more alcoholic and also more liquid. Now when you make a beer, the yeast that you use has a massive effect on the taste of the beer, but does it have a massive effect on the taste of bread? Well, we're going to find out. I'm calling this one the Belgian Wit Bread Challenge. Now to kick this process off, we're going to make a preferment. Now in French cuisine they call this a poulish, in Italian food they call it a biga. If you were making a beer, you'd probably just call it a yeast starter, because that's all it really is. It's just an environment for the yeast to replicate ahead of time and become numerous. Now, all we're going to do to make this is mix an equal part of flour and water. And as for the yeast, well, we're going to use the dregs of what's left, the little yeast sediment at the bottom of this bottle of double agent that I made during the random beer challenge video. Now, if you have watched this video, you'll know we used Belgian wit yeast for this beer. So I'm interested to see if any of that spicy phenolic character transfers into the bread.
So to start this off, we're going to mix an equal part of flour and water. So 200 grams of bread flour, 200 millilitres of normal tap water. Mix that up into a nice even paste, nice and wet. Now a lot of people will be wondering what the difference is between this and a sourdough starter. Well really, a sourdough starter relies on the natural yeast that's in the grain and in the water, as well as the natural bacteria and such forth to start fermenting. As you can see, we're going to use the yeast from the back end of this bottle of double agent. Just going to swirl it up to try and get as much of the carbonation out as possible. Going to drink the rest of the beer and then pour the yeast and stuff from the tub, from the bottle, into the starter. Mix that in nice and thoroughly and then cover it, but don't do all of the latches up. You need to make sure that you give it some space to breathe, as you can see there. Then I left it on my heat pad set to 20 degrees.
So it's been more than 12 hours. So it's been 17 hours and our pre-ferment is looking pretty puffed up and pretty bubbly. Honestly, if I had more time, I'd leave it a full 24 hours, but I've had a slight change of plan and I got to get this whole thing done in the next 3 hours. So I've kind of just got to take it as it is. But if I have a look now, you'll see it's looking pretty decent. So I think we're good to go.
Now the experienced bread makers in the chat are going to cringe here, but I used 500 grams of bread flour, all of the pre-ferment. Then I used 400 millilitres of water, which was way too much water for the flour. As you can see, it's just way too wet, and then I didn't know any better. So I covered it up with some tin foil and I left it in a warm oven for an hour and a half. And
well, it's been about an hour and a half and it's not looking too good at all, to be honest. It's not risen, there's not really any bubbles. I think it's just not been warm enough and maybe there just wasn't enough yeast. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take it to my in-laws' house. I'm going to sit and let it prove there, and maybe they'll let me use their oven, who knows. But I don't really have any other option, to be honest.
So after moving it to a warmer place for a couple of hours, it has risen nicely, but it's still way too wet. As you can see, this is just an unworkable bit of dough. It's just way too wet. I tried my best to knead it, but ultimately I just kept having to add more and more flour to get it into a dough-shaped object, which I did eventually get it into a dough-shaped object. I put it in the oven with a plate of boiling water underneath it and an upside-down tray on top of it. And I baked it for 40 minutes, and this is what came out.
So unfortunately, I didn't get to film myself eating it, or at least I didn't get to film myself eating half of it, because I ate half of it at my in-laws' house. Now I have to say, the crust was phenomenal. It's so crispy and nice. I really was pleased that we managed to get that spot on. And the bread itself, although it was a little bit dense and maybe a little bit too moist, it was good. It was really rich and the taste was incredible. Really nice, especially with a nice little bit of salted butter spot on. Now there was one thing that was missing from the taste, and that was the flavour of the yeast. Now although it did have a really rich bready taste, I just didn't get any of that spiciness. And I don't know if that's just because I didn't do a good enough job on the pre-ferment, or if there's something I can do to make it even better, or if there's something I can do to really enhance the yeast taste. If you've got an idea, or if you've done this before, definitely drop a comment down below and let me know where I screwed up, although there's multiple points where I did screw up, so you'll have to be a bit more specific. Overall, I think this was worth doing. Am I going to do it again? Probably not. It was a lot of faff. Anyway, I'm Dr. Bliss. Go have a beer.